Every ethnicity in the United States has a migration story that was organically passed down to them by their ancestors, except Black America. Black America migration story was given to us. Now let's go ahead and talk about it. If you were to go talk to a European American and you said, when did your family get to the United States? They can say, hey, my family came to the United States in this year through Ellis Island. My family came through the United States. They came from Germany. They came from Poland. They came from France. They came from the United Kingdom. They came from Spain. They can tell you this. They came from Italy. If you went over to Asia America, they're going to say, when did your family come to the United States? They're going to say, my mom and dad or my grandparents came to the United States. They came from Japan. They came from China. They came from the Philippines. They came from India. If you went to Africans, you can say, when did your family come to the United States? They're going to say, hey, my family came to the United States a generation ago. I'm second generational. I came from Ethiopia. I came from Kenya, Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa. So everybody, all the ethnicities, even the Hispanics, they can say, hey, I came from Mexico. I came from Cuba. I came from Puerto Rico. Every ethnicity has a migration story that their ancestors organically has given them. The Native Americans, when you start looking into them and you start looking into their real culture come from Mongolia. They migrated from Siberia. It's wrote in all the European books. The Europeans been writing books after books after books. And even their chiefs and their elders have confirmed those books that the Europeans have wrote and said that they came from Siberia and they came from Mongolia. When you study the two cultures of Mongolia and Siberia, put them against the so-called Native Americans today, you put them right there. And it's a difference between Native Americans and indigenous Americans. When it comes to us, our migration story was given to us. Our migration story was given to us because in our families, we never heard of us, our families telling us that we came from any African tribes. What we did get is our family was Indian. So, my grandma was Indian. My great granddad was Indian. My great great grandma was Indian. Or some people construe it as they were mixed with Indian. Oh, I got Indian in me. I got Indian in me. The thing is that we're not mixed with Indian. We are the Indians. We are the indigenous people. And that's why we don't have the migration story. We can argue of the fact all day is how can our different tribes be passed down orally about our Indian ancestry and not the African ancestry? And millions of us from the United States who all have this experience throughout the United States, no matter what state you in, no matter what region you live in, whether you in the Midwest, the Northeast, the Southeast, the West Coast, no matter what part you're in the United States, millions of us have this experience and no one can pass down an African tribe that organically was given down to them, but everybody can name their Indian tribes. People can say, hey, my grandma was Cherokee. My great granddad was a Blackfoot. My great great grandma was a Creek. My great great great, and so forth, and so on. So that tell you organically, it didn't come down to us that we came from Africa. Organically, what came down to us that we were indigenous to the Americas or indigenous to North America. And when you start getting down into this and you start looking deeper into it, when you start looking at the foods that our people eat, you can look at it right there. One of the biggest mysteries that we can get down to is hot water cornbread, which is Indian bread and one of the main staples of food of the Southeast Indians. And right now, when you look at the Native Americans, they don't eat this cornbread. And corn is indigenous to the Americas. And when you start getting into our culture now, and a lot of the stuff that we still make as a people today, the so-called Black Americans, who are the American Indians, when you start getting to that culture, you're going to see it fit right into what the Southeast American Indians was eating, and we're still doing it today. And the Europeans couldn't teach us that because the Europeans came from Europe, admittedly. So who taught our great grandmas how to make Indian bread that was famous in the Cherokee and Creek Indians and all throughout the Southeast and the Mississippi Empire? Who taught our grandparents, our great grandparents, and their parents how to make this? That was an indigenous food, so that's telling. Now, you're going to get a lot of people to say, well, why would they do this? What about the slave trade? Well, the slave trade was told in reversing also. What they're not telling millions of people as well is that it was an Indian slave trade. Let me ask you this. Can I come knock on your door right now and say, this is my house? If I just show up at your house right now and say, hey, it's the guy from TikTok, this is my house now. You're going to close the door, do something, and if I keep pushing forward, a fight is going to ensue. So what happens is, as they was colonizing this land, the indigenous people was the first slaves. They was the first prisoner of war. All the way up to the day when this warfare, mental warfare, is going on still to this day. So at the same time, the Indians were the first slaves. There's many records on this. And it begs the question too, why would you not teach that part of history in school, along with the Mississippian Empire that's right here in the Americas, along with all the pyramids that goes with the Mississippian empires in the Americas, and the slave trade of the Indian slave trade. Indians were being sent from Connecticut, the Pequot Indians and many other tribes were being sent from Connecticut to the Caribbean. People were being sent from the port of New Orleans over to the Caribbean, Jamaica and Haiti and places all throughout the Caribbean, South America. People were being sent from South Carolina, the indigenous people, and being sent over to Europe. So when I'm letting you know historically factual that the slave trade was told in reverse. So they're not telling a lot of things that go on with the indigenous people. So what they had to do to get us disconnected from the land and brainwash us generationally, they had to go ahead and give us a migration story so we don't be attached to this land, to make us an immigrant on our own land. And to double down on us being an immigrant on our own land, they did the reclassification to Negroes, blacks, and colors. Basically, when our societies or our civilizations or kingdoms collapsed, and a lot of us said, fuck you, our ancestors said, fuck you, I'm not going to Oklahoma. If you stayed in Alabama, Mississippi, North Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, New York, wherever you were at in this United States, now this new country, you were reclassified as a Negro, black, or colored. And this is an actual factual. So it was a choice to go to Oklahoma. And a lot of our ancestors didn't go to Oklahoma. And the ones who stayed on the land were reclassified to Negroes, blacks, and colors. And now African Americans. Going again back to what we talking about, the migration story. So now I give you a migration story telling you come from Africa. And now I changed the label from Negro, blacks, and colored now to African Americans. So I make you believe that you're from Africa. I do all these things because I got money. I can put money into companies and corporations to do this big deception on these DNA tests to make you really believe that you're an African, and put this in the culture of the movies, put this in the culture of music, put this all in the universities, the education system, Pan-African studies. I hire people learning like Melville Herkovitz to write books about the true American Indians having Africanisms to try to connect us to Africa. So now when I give you the African American label, I got you locked in right there, making you believe off my false information and knowledge that you're from Africa. And the final nail in the coffin, I'm going to invite a whole bunch of Africans over here. In the last 20 years, 30 years, they invited more Africans than ever been over. It's over millions of Africans they brought here in the last 30 years. But remember, they say they so-called hate the people. They tell us that we're African. What leader will bring more Africans? You don't like us already. Why would you bring more Africans from all the different countries of Africa when you, quote unquote, already got an African population already that you don't like? And you say, you put them on your nightly news every week and say senseless violence, all the crazy shit to do. They fill our prison system. Why would you build more Africans? Because they know it's two different ethnic groups and they needed them to come over here and solidify the title of African American. So you do all actually have Africans Americans, melanated people from the continent of Africa who are first and second generation Africans. And they're hoping that if we don't understand the gang, that we just mix in with them, and then they have successfully erased our people. So it's important to understand, when we going back to this migration story, tapping back into your ancestors and really understanding the truth about what's going on, because our migration story was not passed down to us about coming from Africa. Our migration story was given to us. The only migration that we have is the Great Migration.